Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to the Internet Innovation Alliance webinar on Back to School with Broadband, how Internet technology is transforming education in America. I am Kwame Simmons, one of the co-chairs of the Internet Innovation Alliance, and on behalf of my two fellow leaders, Bruce Melman and Rick Boucher, I want to welcome you to the call. IIA is a broad-based coalition that focuses on expanding opportunities for all citizens to participate in the new broadband economy that is taking place in America. We want to make sure everyone has access to good quality broadband so that they can conduct the business that we think is so important in the country. We don't want to see a two-tiered society of those with access and those without. So because of that, we have been hosting several of these calls and putting out several documents talking about how important broadband is to Americans in a variety of ways. Healthcare was one that we did recently. We talked about telepsychiatry. We talked about how people can access benefits of speaking to doctors, particularly psychiatrists, psychologists, over broadband, and how that is helping remotely keep people healthy, both rural areas, veterans, people who can't get easily to doctor's offices. We also talk about business, and we have some recent documents out about how business has been made easier, starting small businesses, conducting small business, the money that's saved through getting flights online, to purchasing products, to being able to set up companies using web resources. The broadband has been an incredible tool for people in small business in particular to be able to save money and lower the barrier to entry for those of us who are conducting business in America. And then today, we're going to talk about education. And we know about online learning at the college and university level. It's everywhere. We read the stories about it. So many people are taking advantage of these opportunities. But it's also happening at the K through 12 level. And we've got two experts here with us today who can kind of walk through, from their perspective, how broadband can be used at the K through 12 level. First, we have David Teeter. I'm going to introduce both of our experts. David Teeter, who is the Director of Policy for iNACOL, which is the International Association for K through 12 Online Learning. They've got 3,800 members, public and charter schools, colleges and universities, nonprofits. In David's role, he's responsible for supporting the iNACOL Policy Advocacy Program, developing federal and state policy frameworks, and working collaboratively with iNACOL members on strategic initiatives related to policy and programs. David has more than 25 years professional experience in public policy, government, and education, and brings deep knowledge of the online and blended learning models. Prior to joining iNACOL, David worked for Apex Learning, which included roles such as serving as a full-time online teacher for 5 years and instruction manager. In these roles, David worked with virtual schools, school districts, and schools in over 40 states. He guided the development of instructional best practices and managed professional development to support diverse student learning and school program needs. He's also served in a variety of state and federal public affairs leadership positions, forming partnerships and leading programs and policy development. Strategic policy development, collaborative partnership building, and development of innovative solutions to issues have been a consistent thread in his career. Also joining us is Kwame Simmons. Kwame is a dynamic educator who uses an innovative approach to revolutionize urban education. He's dedicated his career to educating students in the urban centers of Detroit, Michigan, St. Louis, Missouri, and now in the Washington District of Columbia schools. His enthusiasm and depth knowledge regarding current research in school culture, quality, instruction, and assessment make him a rarity in education. Mr. Simmons has worked tirelessly within each of his roles as an education to turn educator to turn urban schools into national models of success. He has managed to do this while moving his staff along his vision and creating an atmosphere that is motivating and designed to raise student achievement. Kwame is a lifelong learner, product of Detroit Public Schools, received an undergraduate degree from Hampshire University and a graduate degree from Teachers College at Columbia in organizational development and leadership, and he is in fact my younger brother. So I got a little stake in his presentation today. So thank you all for being on board. We're going to turn it over first to David. Hopefully you can see the screens, and he's going to walk you through his presentation. And when David's done, we will hear from Kwame. And after his presentation, we'll have a few minutes for question and answer.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to participate in this morning's webinar. It's an exciting opportunity, and I just wanted to highlight a couple of things with regard to just how invaluable a broadband backbone is for expanding the kinds of quality options and learning opportunities for students, as well as for teachers in terms of differentiated instruction and development and providing content, communication, a lot of other things. And finally, for administrators and leaders who are involved in building programs and who really have a strong need in making sure all the resources are in place to provide these opportunities for teachers and students, and for monitoring outcomes and accountabilities. Broadband figures prominently in all of those. Without that, you basically would not be able to do much. So as this opening slide suggests, it does support online and blended learning in important ways, and now it enables personalized learning, differentiated instruction, the kind of teacher-student decision-making, administrator decision-making that we really love to see in our schools around the country. I wanted to highlight just a couple of things here. You can look on the slide here. This slide, the online learning facts, just illustrates how quickly this is unfolding, blended online learning programs around the country, as well as policy development in this arena. So this started in earnest 12 to 15 years ago, and just continues to grow at a dramatic pace. You can see all of these online learning initiatives and efforts, as well as the extensive build-outs of open educational resources, digital content, and extensive investment that's undergoing a lot of change in terms of backbones and platforms. More specifically, if I can advance the slide, the trends in online learning in the U.S., reliable and robust broadband is really critical. District programs are growing dramatically, not only in terms of their online learning options, but probably more particularly and exciting to us at iNACOL is the blended learning opportunities that are occurring within districts. And this, of course, takes great advantage of digital content, digital student management systems, teacher management systems, and so forth, which I'll get to in a moment. And as you can see, the other items here I referred to briefly, but instructional materials, open access, it's really, really critical. I won't mention community college and university level. You evidently have talked about that, but in the K through 12 space, it's dramatic. Provide some context here in the next slide, which really talks about barriers or obstacles, if you will, to schools, students, teachers taking full advantage of broadband in education. What we see across the country is a great digital divide in terms of schools and classrooms which do and do not have the bandwidth with which to meet their needs and to enable them to build out these learning opportunities and resources and management systems that are really going to provide efficiencies and strong learning opportunities for students. Secondly, there are legislative and regulatory barriers as well to building out broadband and to students and schools and teachers taking advantage of online and blended learning. Regulations, the limited ability that we see of many places in the United States to provide either courses which will really make students college and career ready or to meet other kinds of needs that they have. And in addition, there are major gaps in various places across the country in terms of the teachers who are or are not available to instruct students, particularly in some of the STEM areas. And then the third part is the limited data access and transparency. And there is still a very, very strong need for teachers to have better access to student achievement data that's at their fingertips. I might add that when I was teaching online, I was fortunate to have immediate access to student outcomes data, which was real time, which is something I never had when I taught in the brick and mortar classroom. And of course, that all depended upon not only having the student or school management systems, teacher management systems, but also the broadband with which to take advantage of that. And finally, if this slide will advance, one moment. There we go. This more specifically just highlights some of the things that broadband can provide, and I've alluded to these already. In terms of online learning, the data systems and platforms at the school or district level, or at the state level for that matter, once again, broadband really enables things to happen or prevents it from being available. And this relates to activities which occur in a building in terms of blended learning. It relates to online distance learning opportunities, or to various kinds of learning communities which might be in place around the country. Digital content, explosion of digital content. In the next 5 to 10 years, we will largely see a replacement of traditional textbooks by digital content, whether they're digital textbooks or just how we're going to conceptualize these. It's going to be interesting to see. But once again, all of this will provide great opportunities for teachers and students, and it will also necessitate that the broadband be available to make this available at the school level. These are really exciting opportunities, but it's really important that that schools, school districts, and states make sure the broadband capacity is in place to enable this. And finally, the last two things I'll simply refer to are, the data standards are really important, and one of the elements of this is the ability to provide consistent electronic education records which are able to be exchanged across schools and across the states as we look at accountability, as we look at ways to build up our understanding of how students are really doing, how schools are doing in terms of performance. And with that, you can read the rest of it. Time is short. I will wrap it up, and hopefully you have some questions, but thank you.
Well, David, let me ask you a question while we're holding. In addition to online courses, these traditional brick and mortar schools are incorporating computers and internet programs into the classrooms. How has this changed in the learning experience, and how has it changed teaching styles?
In terms of what schools are doing, and what we're talking about is a blended learning model, it's got huge implications in terms of the learning experiences and teaching styles. Number one, what we're seeing is increasing access to digital learning devices which are enabling anytime, anywhere access of students, and for that matter teachers, to content and resources with which to learn. So broadband, of course, is integral to that, particularly when you're seeing the use of these devices in a school. That foundation or that platform needs to be in place. In terms of teachers, I can speak personally to this. It's enormous because with the access to all kinds of digital content that might be developed by a team of teachers and individual teachers that might be vendor provided, that teachers are more able to really differentiate the content that's available not only to a group of students but actually personalize it to students as well. So once again, this is an element, a facet of the digital age that we're trying to make sure quality standards are in place, but once again, without sufficient broadband access and capacity, schools and students are out of luck. So it has enormous implications, and there are huge kinds of innovation going on in terms of instructional styles to meet individual student needs. Last thing I'd mention just is in terms of the ability to see real-time data, as I mentioned earlier, about how an individual student is doing as well as how a classroom is doing, so that teachers can drill down immediately, instantaneously, and are in a much better position to support them. And administrators can use this information, which kind of rolls up to a classroom level. They can look at how teachers, students are doing, etc. So it's a huge change and a huge opportunity.
So, like us today, having a few technical difficulties, have you seen an impact on online learning because of either a broadband, a lack of broadband, or a quality of equipment problem, or any of the other technical things like that? Have you been able to tell an access problem due to some technical issue more than anything else? Have you seen that yet?
Well, I mean, absolutely, and it's an element of the digital divide. We see across the country, within many, if not the majority of states, that there are still areas where broadband access is very, very limited. And oftentimes these are for schools and students who probably would most benefit by online and blended learning. So yes, it's definitely in play and definitely a huge priority across the country, but that gap still exists, unfortunately.
So you're the policy director over at iNACOL. Is there what kind of policy prescriptions do you advise for those of us who are in Washington D.C. who are looking at these issues at the national level?
Well, at the national level, it's just in terms of making sure sort of E-rate decisions and affordability concerns are in place, that ideally there are sort of resources available to states and communities to make sure that they can wrestle with sort of the planning processes and have their ducks in a row to make sure that they're investing sufficiently to make sure the broadband needs are being addressed at the building level. Sometimes what happens is you will have broadband that plugs into a school that meets there, but the bandwidth is very limited. So the federal government can really play a supportive role as well.
Marilyn, are you there? Marilyn Ferdinand.
Yes.
Great. Go ahead with your question. And can you let us know where you're from?
I'm with National PTA. I'm the editor of Our Children magazine, and you actually partially answered my question. I'm wondering where specifically the infrastructure challenges are present, and you say it's in various pockets where students who most need it are not getting it, and what are the exact challenges that we can work to solve?
Well, in answer to that, it's certainly in a lot of states in the western United States, there are the kind of gaps you referred to, and that metropolitan areas might have robust or far more robust digital access and broadband access, but the rural areas, there's a gap. So one of the real needs, and states are trying to work on this, is to make sure across an individual state that the broadband network is fully built out. And I didn't mean to suggest that, for instance, urban areas have uniform access to broadband as well. Again, that's a function of the infrastructure in a building and how a school or a district's dealing with it. But there's tremendous advancement going on here, and a lot of work that still needs to be done. Because as I said, what I'm seeing is enormous innovation in terms of teaching practice, in terms of instructional models, particularly for blended learning, and the nature and kinds of digital resources and data points that are now potentially available to teachers and administrators.
Yes, we are going to hear from Kwame Simmons, who is principal at Kramer Middle School in Washington, D.C., who is doing some innovative things with distance learning and online learning in his school.
So while we have the presentation coming up, I wanted to thank the Alliance team for carving out time and space for us to engage this conversation today. So I wanted to respect everyone's time and try and dive right into this space. So I'm the principal of Kramer Middle School in Washington, D.C., that's been identified as a school that's persistently low performing. So several district, state, and federal funding sources have collaborated to provide some support so that we can address some of the troubling issues with the lower performing schools. So one of the answers to this challenge has come about with what Kramer Middle School will introduce in the fall of 2012, so in literally in just a few weeks. So just to give some background, if we could move to the next slide. Here we go. The district, under the direction of Chancellor Kai Henderson, has decided there are some critical areas that need to be addressed. One being the opportunity to improve the 40 lowest performing schools in the district by 40 percentage points on the state test, which is the DCCAS, the District of Columbia assessment system, comprehensive assessment system. So Kramer is one of those schools. As you can see, the proficiency levels average is 23% in reading and 22% in math. So we're expecting to make a robust effort to increase those scores by 40%, which would increase the district average by 20%, 19%. Next. So with the support of Race to the Top funds and school improvement funds, Kramer has used research and very intentional time and effort to create the first blended school model of its kind for Washington, D.C. So the blended school model will basically be 50% of online instruction and 50% of face-to-face instruction to support what you heard from David in his presentation, which is an opportunity for students to truly feel engaged and to immerse them with technology for educational purposes. Next. So in order to get to this place, we started the school year, 11-12 school year, with a pilot of blended learning. So we brought in smart boards for each class. We had desktop computers in each class, and then we had 2 floating laptop carts, which supported our Johns Hopkins math class, which was online 5 days a week for a class of 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. And what we saw through this pilot was this huge increase in student engagement and focus for academic purposes. So we took that to determine a way in which we could use that information to make that a more holistic effort for student engagement, in which we now came up with what we'll see on the next slide, the first blended school model. So if you envision a traditional block schedule of 90 minutes, 45 minutes of instructional time will be spent with half of that class in a 45-minute space with online content. So we've used the grant funding to increase those 60 laptops that were in each laptop cart, so that there now will be a laptop cart and a classroom set of laptops for every student, bringing us to a 1-to-1 ratio. Next. So the next space is what research supports, is the teacher face-to-face instruction. So when students are engaging in this online environment, we want teachers who's going to have the most impact with the student, that face-to-face teacher, to be able to extend or provide clarity for remediation. So this is what you'll see here. The teacher will be able to provide feedback. Students will be able to extend their learning, and we'll be using a process called discussion-based assessments so the students can accelerate their learning. Next. So I know the question that's being raised is, what is this really going to look like? So we intend to have all classes in an online space. Having each class in an online space, which you see here, will be supported by the following online content providers: Adaptive Curriculum, Johns Hopkins University, Center for Talented Youth, Florida Virtual Schools, and TV Textbook. So we'll bring this together, if you could click again, inside Brain Honey, which is a learning management system that will house all online content. And to do just what David was stating earlier, is provide immediate access to content for students, as well as immediate access for teachers on student performance. So you can click to the next slide. So that student dashboard will look very similar to this. We could click again. It'll give students an opportunity to organize themselves and see when their assignments are due. It'll give them an opportunity to see how they're progressing with each of their courses. And then there'll be announcements to make each student's aware, and teachers have the opportunity to provide feedback and communication on student progress. And then if we click again, we'll see what this space looks like for teachers. And not only is it teachers, it's also a shift for the instructional leadership team. So the teacher will get an opportunity to see all the assignments that are due for all the courses that he or she has. Next, you'll see the summary of all students in all classes and how they're performing. So you can see closely, it shows the total number of students, the responsiveness of students, the student performance, and the student pace. And it'll move in a traditional color coding of red light, green light, yellow light. And then finally, it lists all the courses that the teacher has, and then how are students performing in those classes. And in a very exceptional addition is the critical area. If we click again, and this lists the critical students. Which students are moving at the right pace, which students are performing at the appropriate levels. So I wanted to move quickly through this and hope to get an opportunity to see the picture that's painted for the blended learning model that will be introduced at Kramer. So, and this will be the first blended learning school introduced in the District of Columbia for the 12-13 school year. So, Jamal, I think we are ready for some questions.
Great. Does anybody have any questions for Kwame Simmons about what they're doing on the ground in his school?
Marilyn, please.
Marilyn, I think you are back up. Marilyn?
Yes, I have a question. I like the idea of this real-time data coming in. How will the parents be brought into the digital loop? Will this be a standard feature of parent-teacher conferences? Will there be a dashboard that parents can look in on? Yeah, tell me about the family engagement portion of this.
Thank you, Marilyn, for your question. What we intend to do is create a series of parent workshops throughout the year to engage our parents, because my school is located in a very, very high poverty area, which also has research that shows a huge disconnect in terms of digital access. So we're going to open the school to support having to get parents access to that. So we've allocated funding for a parent coordinator to run these workshops in small sessions to support parents. So parents will have a username and access code to connect to their students' data. So when they come into these workshops, they'll be able to, they'll experience which are the particular areas they should be monitoring, and then if they have challenges, they'll be able to contact the parent coordinator and come back into the school for additional support.
Do we have any other questions? We have we have a couple more minutes left here. Well, let me just ask you while we have you on the phone. What are the obstacles that you see facing as you implement this program over the course of the next year, and do any of them have to do with kind of technical issues, or are they just sort of systemic?
I think that the primary issue that we have, I think David addressed earlier as well, and that it will be this huge burst of broadband capacity. So this will be the first time that any school in the district is in a one-to-one scenario. So what I've learned in this development of increasing the broadband is that there's several things that are inside schools that compromise the fidelity of your broadband access. For instance, many teachers in schools have microwaves in their room, and those things compromise the fidelity of that access. When a traditional access point usually is set up for 15 to 20, sometimes 25 devices. But that doesn't include what's going to occur with those devices. So when you start to pull video down and downloading pictures, those kinds of things require additional broadband capacity. So we've been taking time over the summer to test all the devices, pulling video, loading pictures, things like that, or downloading pictures, so that we can make sure we've increased the right capacity of broadband space for each classroom.
Great. And have you gotten any feedback yet? I know this program is new, but you debuted it the end of last year. Have you gotten feedback from parents or students, or any expectations about, or any nervousness about this new project?
I wouldn't say nervousness. I think that there is a heightened level of excitement. I think that this is the first time model to this magnitude of innovation has been introduced. So I think that there is a huge level of excitement and anticipation for the rollout. So I've been very, very busy since May, ensuring that all the pieces are in place so that teachers are comfortable and students have a smooth transition into this new space. So I'd like to add that. So teachers have received a tremendous amount of professional development in order to access. There was a 2-week window of onboarding them to this blended learning space to be a teacher in that space, and that was at the beginning of the summer, and they've used targeted workshops to support additional teachers since the beginning of July.
Great. Well, I want to thank you, Kwame, and David for being on the call, and for everyone else for joining us. We apologize for our technical difficulties. I think everybody who works with all this equipment knows the peril and the promise of our new digital lives. So thank you all for being on the call, and if you have any questions, please feel free to get in touch with us at IIA. You can get to our website at internetinnovation.org, and also you can follow us